Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share to keep our channel online. Salvador, Bahia. Known for its rich Afro-Brazilian culture, colonial architecture, and vibrant carnival, Salvador offers a lively atmosphere. The historic Pelourinho district is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Salvador, the capital of Bahia state in northeastern Brazil, is one of the country's most historically significant cities. It was the first capital of Brazil and has played a central role in the nation's cultural, political, and economic development. Here's an overview of the city's rich history. Indigenous history. Before the arrival of Europeans, the region now known as Salvador was inhabited by various indigenous groups, including the Tupi, Pataxo, and Aimoré peoples. These communities lived along the coast, relying on fishing, hunting, and agriculture for sustenance. The indigenous people were skilled in using the natural resources of the land and had a deep connection to the coastal environment. Portuguese discovery and colonization. In 1501, the Portuguese navigator Gaspar de Lemos arrived in the Bay of All Saints, Bahia de Todos os Santos, where Salvador is located, marking the beginning of Portuguese interest in the region. In 1549, Tomé de Souza, the first Governor-General of Brazil, officially founded Salvador as the capital of Brazil. The city quickly became the administrative and economic center of Portuguese Brazil, with a focus on the sugar trade, which was the main economic activity in the region during the colonial period. Salvador's strategic location on the coast, with easy access to the Atlantic Ocean, made it a vital hub for the transatlantic trade of goods, including sugar, tobacco, and later gold. The city's port became one of the busiest in the world during this time. The role of slavery. One of the most significant aspects of Salvador's history is its role in the transatlantic slave trade. From the 16th century until the 19th century, Salvador was one of the main entry points for enslaved Africans brought to Brazil. It is estimated that over 4 million Africans were transported to Brazil, many of whom passed through Salvador. The African influence on the city's culture, religion, music, and cuisine is profound and continues to shape Salvador's identity today. In the city, enslaved people worked on sugar plantations, in domestic service, and in urban labor. Over time, the African population in Salvador grew, and their cultural traditions blended with indigenous and European elements, giving rise to a unique Afro-Brazilian culture. This cultural fusion is seen in Salvador's music, especially samba, candomblé religious practices, and capoeira, and cuisine. The rise of Salvador. By the 17th century, Salvador had become a thriving metropolis with impressive architecture and urban development. During this period, the city was home to the Portuguese crown's colonial elite and was known for its wealth, largely derived from the sugar industry. However, the sugar cycle was eventually disrupted by a combination of factors, including competition from other colonies and a decline in sugar prices. Despite this, Salvador continued to grow in importance. The city underwent several architectural transformations, with the construction of churches, palaces, and fortifications, particularly in the Pelourinho district, which remains the historic heart of the city. Independence and the birth of the Brazilian Empire. In 1822, Brazil declared independence from Portugal, and Salvador played a key role in the revolution. The city's inhabitants supported the independence movement, which ultimately led to the establishment of the Brazilian Empire under Dom Pedro I. After independence, Salvador remained the capital of Brazil until 1763, when the capital was moved to Rio de Janeiro due to its more strategic position and economic importance in the coffee trade. Nonetheless, Salvador retained its cultural and regional significance and continued to play an important role in the country's political life. 19th and 20th century changes. In the 19th century, Salvador faced economic challenges as the coffee industry grew in importance in the southeastern regions of Brazil. However, the city remained an important port and industrial center, and the Afro-Brazilian cultural influence continued to deepen, particularly with the rise of candomblé and the samba music genre, which became symbolic of Brazil's identity. By the 20th century, Salvador had evolved into a major cultural center, especially during the cultural movement of the 1930s and 1940s. Salvador became known for its vibrant art scene, music and festivals, particularly Carnival, which is one of the largest and most famous in the world. Contemporary Salvador. Today, Salvador is known for its vibrant Afro-Brazilian culture, stunning colonial architecture, and its status as a key cultural and tourism hub in Brazil. It remains one of the most important cities in the country, hosting world-famous events like Carnival and the Festa de Iemanjá. The city is also a symbol of the persistence and strength of Afro-Brazilian culture, which can be seen in the ongoing influence of candomblé, the samba and axé music genres, and the city's culinary traditions. Salvador's historical center, especially the Pelourinho district, was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985 for its historical and cultural significance. However, Salvador continues to grapple with modern-day challenges, including issues related to inequality, crime, and urban development. Despite these challenges, the city retains its reputation as a symbol of Brazil's cultural diversity and Afro-Brazilian heritage. Salvador's history is a tapestry of indigenous and African influences, colonial power, and cultural transformation. As one of Brazil's oldest and most historically significant cities, Salvador remains a vital hub for Brazilian culture, and its rich history continues to shape the identity of the country. Fernando de Noronha, an archipelago off the northeast coast. Fernando de Noronha is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, known for its pristine beaches, crystal-clear waters, and abundant marine life. It's a top destination for divers. Fernando de Noronha is a stunning archipelago off the northeastern coast of Brazil, known for its exceptional natural beauty, biodiversity, and rich history. The islands have a unique and often turbulent past that spans indigenous settlement, European exploration, military use, and environmental conservation. Indigenous history. Before European contact, the Fernando de Noronha archipelago was likely uninhabited, as its isolation from the mainland made it difficult to settle. However, indigenous groups such as the Tupi and Pataxó were aware of the islands and occasionally visited, primarily for fishing or as part of seasonal journeys. There is limited evidence of permanent indigenous settlements on the islands, but they played a role in the region's overall indigenous culture. European discovery and colonization. The first recorded European discovery of Fernando de Noronha occurred in 1503, when Portuguese explorer Fernão de Noronha, for whom the islands are named, arrived at the archipelago during an expedition. The islands were not immediately colonized, but they were valuable for their strategic position and natural resources, particularly due to their proximity to trade routes in the Atlantic. In the 16th century, the Portuguese began to use the islands intermittently as a stopping point for ships, though they did not immediately establish permanent settlements. Over time, Portuguese interest in the islands grew, and they began to use them as a base for the exploitation of Brazil wood, a valuable resource used for dye, and as a point of defense for Brazilian waters. The archipelago's strategic importance was also tied to controlling the maritime routes between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Military and penal use. During the 17th and 18th centuries, Fernando de Noronha began to be used for military purposes, particularly by the Portuguese. The Portuguese constructed forts and military installations on the islands to defend the coast of Brazil from French and Dutch attacks, as well as to control the surrounding seas. The fort of Nossa Senhora dos Remédios, built in the early 18th century, is one of the enduring structures from this time. The islands also gained notoriety in the 19th century as a penal colony. In 1737, the Portuguese began to use Fernando de Noronha as a site for the imprisonment of political prisoners, particularly those deemed threats to the colonial government. Over time, it became a notorious place for the imprisonment of various political dissenters, including those involved in revolts and independence movements against Portuguese rule. During the Brazilian Empire, 1822 to 1889, Fernando de Noronha continued to serve as a penal colony, with political prisoners exiled there, further cementing its reputation as a harsh and isolated place. Notably, the island was used to incarcerate prisoners of the Cabanagem Revolt, 1835, and those who participated in the early independence movements of Brazil. 20th century military and conservation efforts. By the early 20th century, Fernando de Noronha was under Brazilian control after Brazil gained independence from Portugal. The island's isolation and strategic location led to their continued use as a military outpost. During World War II, the Brazilian Navy established a significant military presence on the islands, using it as a base for monitoring the Atlantic Ocean and defending against German U-boat attacks in the region. Post-war, the islands remained under military control. In 1988, Brazil's constitution established the islands as a marine national park and a protected area, leading to the creation of Fernando de Noronha National Marine Park in 1989. This helped preserve its extraordinary natural environment, including its coral reefs, unique wildlife, and ecosystems. The park now encompasses both the islands and surrounding marine areas, with strict regulations to protect the fragile environment from overdevelopment and exploitation. Environmental conservation and tourism. Today, Fernando de Noronha is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for its remarkable biodiversity and stunning landscapes. The islands are home to a variety of endemic species, including the Noronha sea turtle, and they serve as a crucial nesting ground for sea turtles and as a sanctuary for marine life. The archipelago's coral reefs are among the best preserved in the world. Tourism to Fernando de Noronha has been carefully regulated to ensure its environmental preservation. The number of visitors is limited each year, and they are required to pay an environmental preservation fee. The island's economy is now largely based on ecotourism, and visitors come to experience its pristine beaches, scuba diving, and wildlife watching, particularly the famous dolphin populations that inhabit the area. The history of Fernando de Noronha is marked by its isolation, strategic importance, and changing uses, from a site of colonial defense to a penal colony and military outpost, before ultimately becoming a conservation area and ecotourism destination. Today, it stands as one of Brazil's most unique natural treasures, recognized for both its rich history and environmental significance. Chapada Diamantina National Park, Bahia. This park is home to impressive landscapes of mountains, waterfalls, caves, and valleys. The area is popular for hiking and exploring its natural beauty. Chapada Diamantina National Park, located in the state of Bahia, Brazil, is a stunning area of rugged mountains, caves, waterfalls, and valleys, renowned for its unique natural beauty and ecological diversity. The history of Chapada Diamantina is intertwined with the region's indigenous peoples, the discovery of diamonds, and its eventual recognition as a protected national park. Indigenous history. Before European arrival, the region of Chapada Diamantina was inhabited by several indigenous groups, including the Pataxó, Tupinamba, and Chavante peoples. These indigenous communities lived in the area, using the region's rich natural resources for hunting, fishing, and agriculture. Their deep connection with the land shaped the way they interacted with the environment, and many of their practices and knowledge about the land's resources have been passed down through generations. European exploration and early colonization. The first European explorers to arrive in Chapada Diamantina were the Portuguese in the early 16th century as part of their colonization of Brazil. However, the area was not heavily settled by Europeans at first due to its mountainous terrain and distance from the coast. The Portuguese concentrated their efforts on the more accessible coastal areas, leaving the interior largely unexplored for some time. The region began to attract more attention from the Portuguese settlers during the 18th century, as gold and precious stones were discovered in the interior of Brazil. The mountains and valleys of Chapada Diamantina became more significant as exploration pushed inland. The discovery of diamonds and the diamond rush. The pivotal moment in the history of Chapada Diamantina occurred in the 1840s, when diamonds were discovered in the region. This led to a rush of miners, prospectors and settlers flooding into Chapada Diamantina, hoping to strike it rich. The area became a hub for diamond mining, particularly in towns like Lençóis and Andaraí. This diamond rush had profound social and environmental impacts. The influx of miners led to the establishment of mining towns, and the extraction of diamonds from the region continued for several decades. Many of the historical buildings in Chapada Diamantina, particularly in Lençóis, reflect the wealth generated during this period. While mining was economically significant for the region, it also contributed to the degradation of the environment, as forests were cleared, rivers were polluted, and wildlife habitats were disturbed. Over time, the diamond resources in the region began to deplete, and by the 20th century, mining operations in Chapada Diamantina significantly declined. The creation of Chapada Diamantina National Park in the 1980s, the Brazilian government recognized the ecological significance of Chapada Diamantina and began efforts to protect its unique landscape. Chapada Diamantina National Park was officially established in 1985, covering an area of about 1,520 square kilometers. The park was created not only to preserve the region's natural beauty, but also to protect its biodiversity, including rare plant and animal species, and its unique ecosystems, which include tropical forests, caves, rivers, waterfalls, and high-altitude plateaus. The creation of the national park also aimed to balance the need for environmental protection with the promotion of ecotourism, as Chapada Diamantina's stunning landscapes and rich cultural heritage made it an increasingly popular tourist destination. The park's establishment helped prevent further environmental degradation and allowed for the development of sustainable tourism that respects the local ecology, cultural heritage, and local communities. Despite the decline of diamond mining, Chapada Diamantina continued to be home to various communities, including those descended from former slaves and migrant workers who had arrived during the diamond rush. The region's local culture is heavily influenced by Afro-Brazilian traditions, and the influence of the diamond mining period remains visible in the architecture and local customs of towns like Lençóis, Mucugê, and Ibicoara. Many of these communities have adapted to the modern era through agriculture, crafts, and tourism, with a growing number of local guides and small businesses offering services to visitors. Ecotourism in Chapada Diamantina, which includes activities such as hiking, waterfall exploration, and visits to natural caves, has become a key driver of the local economy. Natural features and biodiversity. Chapada Diamantina is a hotspot for biodiversity. The park is home to a variety of ecosystems, including cavernas, caves, rivers, waterfalls, and the iconic tabletop mountains, known as tepuis. Its dramatic landscapes, with towering cliffs, expansive plateaus, and deep valleys, are complemented by its rich flora and fauna, with many endemic species of plants and animals. Notable natural landmarks within the park include Fumaça Waterfall, one of Brazil's highest waterfalls. Poço Azul, a crystal-clear underground river that attracts diverse. Morro do Pai Inácio, a famous peak that offers panoramic views of the surrounding area. The park's natural environment also contains a wide variety of plant species, including orchids, bromeliads, and several species of cacti. The park is also home to many animal species such as jaguars, maned wolves, giant anteaters, and a wide range of bird species, including the hyacinth macaw. Chapada Diamantina National Park represents a fusion of Brazil's natural beauty and historical complexity. From the ancient traditions of indigenous peoples and early Portuguese exploration to the boom and bust of the diamond mining industry, the region has seen significant change. Today, it stands as a testament to both the cultural and environmental richness of Brazil, attracting eco-tourists, researchers, and adventurers alike. Its creation as a protected area has helped preserve one of the country's most remarkable landscapes while promoting sustainable tourism and community involvement. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share to keep our channel online.